It's great to see you. I'm still talking about the Fukanzazengi, which is, as I think most of you know, it's a writing by Dogen Zenji. It was one of the first things he wrote is actually a revision of a Chinese text that he did. We recite it every Thursday morning. And it's a good reminder and also a good koan about sitting zazen. So this is the fifth talk, and this is the part about think not thinking. So we could talk about that. Up to this point, I think the last time we talked about like what you're doing with your body when you're sitting zazen. So this is more about what we're doing with our mind. All right, so the part I want to talk about today is this. Think, not thinking. How do you think, not thinking, non-thinking? This in itself is the essential art of Zazen. The Zazen I speak of is not learning meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of repose and bliss, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. Traps and snares can never reach it. Once its heart is grasped, you are like the dragon when he gains the water, like the tiger when she enters the mountain. So by the way, in the original, this probably was not gendered. So it would be more like the dragon when they gain the water, the tiger when they enter the mountain. For you must know that just there in Zazen, the right Dharma is manifesting itself, and that from the very first dullness and distraction are struck aside. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And the very first line is kind of the crux of this, or maybe not, but I think for us about what we're doing in Zazen. Think, not thinking. How do you think, not thinking, non-thinking? This in itself is the essential art of Zazen. So this comes from a story, a koan, that you can find in the Blue Cliff Record, but it's also in other places as well. And the basic story goes, once after Master Yaoshan was sitting zazen, a monk asked him, when you are sitting, what do you think? And the what do you think in Japanese, think is shiryu. So what do you think? The master replied, I think about not thinking, which is he shiryu in Japanese. And it's important to know that if, I don't know, in a way, I just digress here, in a way, it sounds great in English. Think, non-thinking. How do you think, not thinking, non-thinking? Like that sounds, poetically it goes along, but it really doesn't tell us what the words are actually mean. And it makes it much easier to understand it when you understand the words that are being used here instead of the kind of poetic English translation. Okay, so thinking is shiryu. The master replied, I think about not thinking, which is he shiryu. The monk responded, how does one think about not thinking, which is fu shiryu? So in English, the not thinking, the first not thinking, he shiryu, is not a hyphenated word, but the second one, fu shiryu, is hyphenated. So it's more like not thinking as one idea. We'll talk about this in a minute. And the master replied, with think not thinking, he shiryu. So what does all this mean? So shiryu, which is thinking. So thinking, shiryu, is like what we do when we're thinking. Like when we're sitting in zazen and we're going, oh, I think I'm going to go to, Home Depot after zazen is over, and then I'm going to work on this thing. And maybe I'll stop by New Leaf and do this. Or maybe you're sitting there thinking about some interaction you had the day before, or some interaction that you had this morning, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking, boy, I don't like that, or I wish this were this way, or gosh, why didn't I say that? Or, it's like, next time that happens, I got a great one-liner for that one. Or maybe you're just like completely out of it. You're like basically having a dream. So you're sitting there and you're not conscious of where you are, your eyes are closed, which you probably are doing if you're thinking with your eyes are closed as well. You're completely unaware of what's going on around you. And it's like, you're like kind of in this fugue state or something like that. Or maybe you're just overcome with some kind of like serious emotional thing that you're going through, that you're thinking about. So this is this state of Shiryu that is happening. So the problem with Shiryu from the perspective of Zazen instruction, it's not necessarily a bad thing to think, problem solve, think about going to the store, what you can buy, all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have strong emotions about stuff, to, like think through that and ask yourself what's going on, etc. But in Zazen, that's not our instruction. In Zazen, we're being asked to do something else. So the problem with the whole idea about this sort of mentation that we're engaged in Zazen is that it keeps us kind of not aware of the totality of what's going on around us. So if you think about what it means to talk about realization, so Dogen says in Genjo Koan, to carry this self forward is delusion. To allow myriad things to meet you is realization. So allowing myriad things to meet you is this way in which we are not trapped by our thinking about it, right? We're not caught in some kind of fixed notion about what that situation is about, and we're trying to control it. So when we do that, that's delusion, right? That makes sense. So it's like if you're in some situation where you don't like somebody and they start talking to you about something, and immediately you're thinking to yourself, I hate this person, I don't like them, they're this, they're that, I wish I weren't here, I don't care what they say, they're just full of, it's like, I just don't want to listen to any of this. So what would it be like if you actually were open-minded about this person and actually met them where they were and were not judgmental about it? Like, wouldn't you be able to be more skillful in the situation? So wouldn't you be able to, like, if you meet somebody, we're so polarized politically. So if you meet somebody who doesn't share your political views and they're off carrying on about something in this very, let's say, black and white way, and maybe because you're not getting judgmental and having this response of like, just get away from me, maybe you say to them, why do you think that? Or I'm curious about that idea that you have, and I wonder what's going on. And then all of a sudden they start talking about things that are more nuanced, and they really kind of drop down into a different place. And then you're having an intimate conversation where you're actually meeting each other, where you weren't doing that before. So that is a realized response. So in Zazen, if we're thinking and thinking and thinking, myriad things cannot come forward and meet us. So that it's pretty simple in that regard. There's this way in which, what are myriad things? Well, in Zazen, we're usually in a fairly quiet environment. So we're sitting here and maybe we're listening to the birds, or, we're feeling what we're feeling, or hear other people, or whatever it is. But there's this kind of clear space where we can just let whatever's happening happen. And we don't get caught in our ideas about it. And we are aware, that's why our eyes are open, and we are aware of our surroundings and what's happening. Okay, so Shiryu thinking from the perspective of Zazen, not good. But we still do it. Yeah, I mean, we still do it. We sit down, I do this, I sit down, I start to think, I find my eyes closed. But the thing is that when you do that, you want to come back, you want to open your eyes, come back to the present moment. Okay, Fushiryu would be no thinking, no thoughts at all. So when I first started practicing, I was reading like Be Here Now and Baba Ram Das and all sorts of stuff like that back in the early 70s. And so I was kind of into a Hindu practice. And there was this way that, there are all these techniques about how you stop your thinking, so you don't have any thoughts at all. I remember there was one that your thoughts were like a train going by. And if you focused on the space between the train, that was the no thought. And the idea was that you would have no thoughts. and that was the whole point, and that I guess you would go into some other state of mind. That's not what we're doing. We're not trying to stop our thoughts. Uchama Roshi says thoughts are like mind secretions. You're just going to have these thoughts. You know, our brain is engaged. I think it's like a problem-solving machine, right? There's some part of that is so sexy to us, so compelling to us. So, you know, like, it's like some kind of greedy little thing that is so juicy. Like, oh, thinking, oh, I just love it. I just love to think, you know, I just love to get into this, especially when I'm quiet. Just, oh my God, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here. Wow, this is a great time to think. This is a great time to have a fantasy. This is a great time. But no, we're not doing that. And we're not trying to stop our thoughts. Okay, so what are we doing? We're doing He Shiryu. He Shiryu is the mind of Zazen. It is the mind of allowing myriad things to come forth and meet you. So we don't think about what we're thinking, you know, we don't get caught in that. We don't get caught in judgment about what we're doing. So whether or not we're catch ourselves thinking or fantasizing or dreaming, we don't beat ourselves up about it. We're not judgmental about it. We just come back to the present moment. We open our eyes, we come back to the present moment. We're not concentrating really hard on anything. So we're not following our breath. Like some meditation techniques are, you should follow your breath. We're not following our breath. We're not worried about whether we're breathing deeply or shallowly or anything like that. You know, it's like Dogen says, a long breath is a long breath and a short breath is a short breath. It's just this way of the eyes are horizontal and the nose is vertical. It's just what's happening in that moment. So that's not the instruction. The instruction is to just keep coming back to the present moment. Now, what does that mean? Well, that's part of the koan of doing Zazen. Just keep coming back to the present moment and something will happen. Something happens anyway. Whether you come back to the present moment or not, I really believe that the activity of Zazen, just coming to the Zendo or sitting down at home and doing Zazen, is transformative in and of itself, even if you spend your whole time asleep. But that's not what we're supposed to be doing. And if we do what the instruction is, it's so much richer. I think we are enabling ourselves to actually have this experience of allowing myriad things to come and meet us in a way that's non-intellectual, in a way that's really grounded in our body. So this willingness to make this effort to do this practice is, I think, very helpful. You can, if you know, but again, if you can't make that effort, don't beat yourself up about it, because maybe there's something that you need to be doing that's not about making this effort. Does that make sense? I mean, I really want to stress this, is that, you know, we read the text and the texts are like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is like, if you don't do this, you know, things are just horrible things are going to happen. Like, you must work really hard at this. I want you to know what the instruction is. I want to encourage you to do what the instruction is. But sometimes what you're doing is something that you need to do that may not be exactly that instruction. I know a teacher who slept through like 2 years of Zazen, just slept through the whole thing because that's what she needed to do. There are other people who shake. I haven't actually seen somebody do this, but I've heard these stories from people, they just shake during Zazen for a while. And that was the thing, that something was being worked through. So I don't want to get like real dogmatic about this with you. I don't want you to go away and say to yourself, well, Shinshu said that, you know, I should be doing this. And if I don't do this, my Zazen is horrible. And then you go away and say, well, I can't do this, so I'm just going to stop going to Zendo. I don't want to give you that idea, because that's not what this is about. So because there's a lot more going on than we know about. And this is the instruction of doing Shikantaza. So I'm reading the Fukanzazengi, I'm doing the Fukanzazengi with you. This is the instruction. Okay, so Hishiryu is this mind of Zazen. And now, so what, I found some quotes by Suzuki Roshi, and I thought it might be interesting to see what Suzuki Roshi had to say about sitting Zazen. Okay, so I think each one of these quotes, he's talking about various things that we might get caught in. So the first one is the really, really, really famous thing where he said, don't invite your thoughts to tea. So that's the one where, we're involved in thinking, and we're really happy to be thinking. And not only are they there, these mind secretions, but we're like metaphorically saying, please sit down, have some tea. Would you like a cookie? Stay as long as you like. I'm really enjoying my company with you. Let's get into it. So he's saying, this is this mind we're caught up in stories, we're dreaming, we're completely unaware of what's going on around us. So this would be him saying, don't invite your thoughts to tea. Shohaku Okumura describes this as a gears, disengaging gears, like this. So it's like your thinking mind as like these gears that come together and and you just keep going. And the mind of coming back to things just as they are is saying, okay, I'm just going to disengage these gears and just experience things without getting caught. Thoughts come up, let it go. Thoughts come up, let it go. So sometimes you hear, like, I think of Vipassana, they do this, where a thought comes up and they label the thought. They say, something like, I don't know, judgmental or whatever the thought might be. We're not doing that. There's no labeling going on here. It's just disengage, come back to the present moment, disengage. All right, the next one quote is, he said, if you are taking care, so do Zazen as if you were taking care of a friend or of children. Your thinking mind is like a child running around you. And you say, oh, be careful. When you practice this way, there is no you anymore. That is the secret of going beyond self-centered practice. Okay, so he said, you should sit Zazen as if you are taking care of a friend or a child. Your thinking mind is like a child running around you. And then you say, oh, be careful. When you practice this way, there is no you anymore. That is the secret of going beyond self-centered practice. Okay, I think this quote is, he's saying, be kind to yourself. This is not an activity of beating yourself up. Who wants to do something where you beat yourself up? Like, what's that about? So that is not the instruction here, to say that to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Bring your mind back to the present moment. Do that as long as it happens. And then just bring yourself back again. Like, it's not necessary to have any judgments about this at all. It's just this activity that you're engaged in. And in real life, when we're not sitting Zazen, isn't that what happens all the time? It's like we find ourselves caught in some idea that we have, we're like, something comes up, sometimes I'm amazed, this little prejudiced voice just pops up in my head. It's like something will happen and I'll like think to myself something racist or something really, outrageous. And then I go, well, okay, where did that come from? Maybe that's just some kind of causal conditions of I grew up in a particular environment or whatever. Do I have to start beating myself up for that? No. Did I act on it? No. It's a thought. It's like I say, oh, that's interesting. Wow, I don't really believe that. So and then let it go. So it's like, I don't have to like get all caught up in it, but I need to say, okay, that was interesting, and not act on it, right? So there's this way in which that this is allowing mirror things to come forth and meet you, is that we don't have to be judgmental about this stuff. We can just say, okay, I'm thinking, I'm dreaming, I'm asleep, I'm restless, I'm hurting, I'm having a satori experience, we just let it go and just keep coming back. No, thing around it. So he says, our mind is like a child. This is absolutely true. We are just, all the time, running around, running circles, running around. Yeah, and he's saying, okay, you do that. So be careful. So you don't smack yourself. You don't, it's like kids are kids. They do what they do. And a lot of you guys have dogs. So, dogs do this too, right? They run around and you say, well, be careful. Don't eat that piece of stuff on the ground, please. It's like, be careful. So he's saying, let's be nice to ourselves. And then this last part, I think, is really interesting, where he says, when you practice this way, there is no you anymore. So that's kind of interesting what that's about. So I think what he's saying is, that if you are not being invested in trying to control your mind in Zazen, or in particular in Zazen, and you're not trying to identify with getting rid of some particular thing that you've identified as being a problem, nor are you attached to having a particular experience in Zazen, you are not caught in creating a particular self. Does that make sense? So it's like, if we sit down in Zazen and we say to ourselves, well, I can't sit Zazen. I can't tell you, this is really interesting to me. People come up to Jakunai in the grocery store who've come to Ocean Gate, like maybe 1 or 2 times. And this happened a few times. They come up to us in the grocery store and they say, I'm really sorry I'm not coming to the Zendo anymore, but I can't sit Zazen because I think too much. So it's like, they've just, there's probably a lot more going on than just that, like maybe getting up in the morning is a problem, but usually, inevitably, it has to do with this notion of they think too much. This is when we say this kind of stuff to each other, we are defining the nature of who we are. We're saying, I am a person who cannot do this, or I am a person who can do this, or I'm, I'm this or I'm that. Instead of, in Zazen, he's saying, don't define who you are. Just drop who you are. Just be present. There's no you there to be judgmental or pat yourself on the back or whatever it is. It's just a clear space. So this is dropping body and mind. Dropping body and mind, Shinjin Datsuraku, in Zazen, is not about not having a mind. It's not about not having a body. It's not about going into some kind of jhana state, which is a kind of concentration practice used in, say, Theravada Buddhism. So it's not about that. Dropping body and mind is this presencing oneself for what is actually happening with a mind of curiosity, non-judgment, openness, listening. It is letting the ego that is invested in making a particular self, which we do through our opinions, our judgments, etc., letting all that go and just really being present for what's actually happening. So that's the mind, dropping body and mind, where we say to the person that is making inflammatory things, saying state to us inflammatory statements or whatever about politics, we say, well, what are you actually thinking about? I'm curious. What is a kind of underlying thing? What's happening here? This open willingness, that's dropping the self, because dropping body and mind, because that person that's asking the question is not saying to themselves, I define myself as a person who is moral and right and ethical, and therefore I can't have a conversation with this person. Does that make sense? And so there's this way that that's dropping body and mind. And in Zazen, dropping body and mind is this way in which we are not thinking, this way in which we are not getting in the way of our ability to just be present for our life as it's unfolding. And Zazen's great because usually there's not a whole lot going on around us. I mean, maybe we don't like the traffic outside. Maybe there's somebody making a lot of noise and we don't like that. But basically, it's a fairly calm environment that we're sitting in. So it's like this clear space that we get in order to be able to really just kind of settle down into this experience. So I think that's what he's saying when he says, you know, this business about there is no you that's happening. And he says, this is the secret of going beyond self-centered practice. So self-centered practice is when we have this agenda, and usually the agenda has to do with something that we want to get out of practice. So we have a preconceived idea about that. Like Dogen says in one fascicle, he says, you know, be careful about what you think enlightenment is. Essentially, be careful about that, because really, you don't even know what it is. If you have these ideas about what it is, chances are good you don't even know what it is. So just let go of all that stuff and don't even make up a story about what you think that's about. So this is this way in which self-centered practice is a way in which we have this kind of agenda about what we're going to get out of it. So how do we just be present for our life as it is unfolding? And then the next quote is, you don't try to hear or see anything, but when something appears in your mind, leave it, accept it. You say, oh, that's all. No second activity appears in your zazen. Maybe you go on in your mind, what is that sound? That is the second activity. You don't make any judgments. You don't figure out what it is. Okay, I'll read it again. You don't try to hear or see anything. So this is a kind of concentration practice. We're not trying to hear anything in particular. We're not trying to see anything in particular. We're not trying to, like, you know, you sit there and look at the wall, and inevitably you see fishtails, horses running, all sorts of stuff in the wall. But it's like, you're not actually trying to see that. It's just what's appearing, and then you just let it go. Although I have to say, sometimes I go back and say, is it still there? So you know, you just keep on letting that go. And then you don't try to hear anything. I mean, yes, you hear the birds outside. That's a way to stay present, is to listen to what's going on around you. But you're not trying to hear anything in particular. And then he says, but when something appears in your mind, leave it and accept it. So, okay, you know, I'm staring at the wall, and yeah, there's a fishtail. There is a fishtail over there in that wall. You know, the little whale's tail comes up, and then just let it go. You know, I don't have to try to find the rest of the whale. I don't have to, like, you know, see if there's a running horse next to it. I can just let that go. I can let go whatever's going on in my mind, just accept it. And he says, you say, oh, that's all. And then he says, there's no second activity appears in your zazen. And then maybe you go on. So his example of that is, what is that sound? So that's kind of interesting, because I think our minds are really hardwired to label things. So it's really hardwired to hear. I don't know a lot of bird calls, luckily, but I do know what crows sound like, and I know what seagulls sound like. And every once in a while, like once a year, geese will go over the zendo, and your mind immediately goes, geese, like that, right? And so there's this way in which to actually find that space between the hearing the sound and the labeling is an interesting activity. And I think what he's saying is that the more we can be really present for what's happening without all the labeling and the verbiage, though, and settle into that, that's going to start to happen automatically. I don't think there's any way you can practice or make yourself not label things. So I think that what happens is, as we settle in to Zazen, as we settle into this mind of just being present for our life, the labeling drops away. So let's not worry about that, because I don't think we can make that happen. And then he says that's the second activity. You don't make any judgments. You don't figure out what it is. Just to let it go. If that starts to happen, just let it go. Okay, so I have been talking now for quite a while, so I'm gonna just stop here and pick up the next part of this in the next lecture. So there it is. That's my understanding of what Dogen's saying when he says, think, not thinking. Thank you very much.